There is one psalm in the entire Bible that the devil himself has quoted, word for word, not paraphrase quoted. Most people know Psalm 91 as the protection psalm, the one read over soldiers before they ship out, the one framed on bedroom walls, the one whispered in hospital rooms. But almost no one stops to ask the strange question buried inside this psalm's history. Why would Satan, in the wilderness, standing on the pinnacle of the temple, reach for these exact verses to tempt Jesus? If a promise is powerful enough that the enemy tries to weaponize it, it is worth understanding precisely what it actually says, not the greeting card version. The real one. That's what we're doing today. Psalm 91 has no named author in the Hebrew text. No superscription. No, a Psalm of David. It simply begins, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty." Two names for God appear in that single sentence. Elyon, Most High, and Shaddai, Almighty. Elyon speaks to God's position above every throne, every empire, every claim to power. Shaddai speaks to God's sufficiency, the one who is enough, the source that does not run dry. The psalm opens not with a request, but with a location. Dwelling, not visiting, not occasionally checking in during a crisis. Dwelling, the Hebrew word yashab, to sit down, to settle, to remain. This matters because everything that follows in the psalm is conditioned on this single posture. The promises are not given to people in danger. They are given to people who live somewhere specific. Verse 2 shifts from description to declaration. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Refuge, machase, a place of shelter from a storm. Fortress, metsuda, a stronghold, often literally a rock formation, used defensively in ancient warfare. These are not soft words. They are military words, architectural words, words used to describe places where armies could not be reached. Then verse 3 turns towards something specific. Surely he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler, and from the deadly pestilence. The fowler, a hunter of birds, use snares, hidden traps, deception. This is not protection from an obvious enemy charging at you. This is protection from what you cannot see coming, the trap set in silence. And then, pestilence, disease that moves invisibly through a population. Ancient readers would have understood this as the literal plague, but notice the pairing, the unseen trap and the unseen sickness. The psalm is naming the two things humans fear most, precisely because they cannot be fought directly: deception and disease. Verse 4 gives the image that has outlasted every generation since. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. This is maternal language. A mother bird does not simply guard her young from a distance. She covers them, places her own body between them and the threat. The Hebrew word for wings here, kanaf, is the same word used elsewhere for the wings of the cherubim over the Ark of the Covenant. The same covering that shielded the presence of God in the tabernacle is the covering offered here to an individual in a poem. What follows in verses 5 through 8 is not vague comfort. It is a list, specific, escalating, almost relentless. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. Notice the structure. Night and day, hidden and visible, slow and sudden. The psalm is not promising one category of safety. It is naming every category of danger a human mind can construct, and addressing each one directly. This is significant because most people do not fear one thing. They fear several things at once, often things that contradict each other. The fear of being seen and the fear of being unseen. The fear of sudden disaster and the fear of slow decline. The psalm does not skip any of them. Verse 7 escalates further. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. This verse has troubled readers for centuries, because it sounds, on the surface, like a promise of personal exemption from the suffering of others, and that reading has caused real damage. People have stood in this verse and asked why others fell and they did not, or worse, concluded that someone who suffered must not have been dwelling closely enough. But the structure of Hebrew poetry rewards a closer look. This verse is not making a statistical claim about who lives and who dies. It's using hyperbolic numbers, a literary device common throughout the Psalms, to communicate something different. That even in the presence of overwhelming surrounding catastrophe, the person dwelling in this shelter is not abandoned to chaos. The promise is about presence, not exemption. This brings us to the moment that makes this psalm unlike any other in Scripture. The moment it gets quoted by Satan himself. In Matthew chapter 4, after 40 days in the wilderness, Jesus is taken to the highest point of the temple. And the temptation is built directly on Psalm 91, verses 11 and 12. For he will command his angels concerning you. To guard you in all your ways is less than 0. 5 is greater than. They will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Satan says, throw yourself down. Scripture says angels will catch you. Doesn't your own theology demand you test it? Here is what makes this moment so revealing. The devil does not misquote the psalm. He gets the words exactly right. What he removes is the location. Remember verse 1. He who dwells. The entire psalm is built on a posture of abiding trust, not on staged tests of divine reflexes. The promise of angelic protection was never meant to be summoned on command, to validate a leap taken on human terms. It belongs to the person already dwelling, not the person performing a test, to force God's hand. Jesus' response is not actually a rejection of Psalm 91. It is a correction of how it was being used. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. This is the deepest insight available in this entire psalm, that true promises can be twisted into false tests. The difference is never the words. The difference is the posture behind them. Dwelling trusts, testing demands, and Scripture's most dangerous misuse has always come from people who know its words, but have abandoned its posture. Verse 13 returns to imagery that ancient readers would have recognized instantly. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Lion and serpent. The two creatures across the ancient Near East, most associated with hidden, overwhelming danger. The lion, visible, powerful, sudden. The serpent, hidden, patient, poisonous. Together, they form a complete picture of threat, the kind that attacks openly and the kind that waits silently. And then the psalm shifts voice entirely. For the first 12 verses, someone has been speaking about God. In verse 14, God begins speaking directly. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him, because he knows my name. To know God's name in Hebrew thought was never about possessing information. It meant relationship, the kind of knowing that comes from proximity, history, and trust. Not facts about God. Familiarity with God. The final verses promise presence in trouble, not exemption from it. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. Not, I will prevent trouble. I will be with him in trouble. This single phrase reframes everything that came before. The psalm was never promising a life without danger. It was promising a presence inside danger that nothing else could offer. This is why the devil could quote this psalm and still be wrong. He had the verses. He did not have the dwelling. A promise repeated without relationship becomes a formula. A promise lived inside relationship becomes shelter. The same 14 verses can be a weapon in one mouth and a refuge in another. The difference was never the text. If you have ever recited this psalm during a hard season, over a hospital bed, before a flight, in a moment of fear, the question worth sitting with is not whether the promise is true. It's whether the posture underneath it is dwelling or merely reciting. Go back to the very first word of the psalm. Not a request, not a demand, a location. He who dwells. The devil stood on the pinnacle of the temple, holding the same words you may have memorized as a child, and he could not access a single ounce of what they promised, because he had the verses, without the shelter. Psalm 91 was never a magic formula, to be recited at the edge of a cliff. It is an invitation to live somewhere, in the shadow, under the wing, inside the relationship the rest of the psalm assumes. The promise was never about the words you say. It's about the place you stay. God bless you.